So, welcome to another episode of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. I am Laina Orlando, and today we're going to be recording episode 150. It's mind-boggling how I've been doing these things for over 3 years, and it's just such an important part of my practice, my ability to remain grounded, to stay connected to the truth, is because through A Course in Miracles, I learned that to learn is to teach, and to teach is to learn. So I keep sharing what I'm learning. And as I share what I learn, I realize what is still in my head and what is in my heart, what I have come to embody, and where do I just talk the talk. Because I made a commitment a very long time ago when I started this journey that I was going to live exactly as I was learning was the truth about me and everybody else. And I have been unwavering in my commitment since then. And I'm talking, this probably happened in, I'm going to say sometime around 2006, 2007. So it's been quite a while. And my commitment was to stay in a place of acknowledging the truth as the truth. And A Course in Miracles has been instrumental in helping me recognize that the truth is true and it is unalterable. And every single time that I have an opinion about the truth, that I have my own idea about how things are, I have to check in and call myself out. I cannot operate inside of believing the lies for very long. It's very uncomfortable. And in the beginning, the truth sounded so lofty. Oh, I'll never achieve that. I'll never be able to be enlightened. I'll never be able to be like Jesus or like Buddha. And had many conversations with myself where I would tell myself, because I was learning to become the presence of awareness that was aware that in my head were two voices. And I would know I was committed to the truth, and I read the truth. I read hundreds. It was over 500 books over a period of 10 years, countless workshops that I attended, so many teachers that I followed until I found the Course in Miracles. And that pretty much has been my primary guide, because it's clear Course in Miracles teaches truth, and I wanted to live by truth. So I was becoming the presence of awareness. When I say I, the me that was becoming conscious of what was going on. And I was recognizing that I had two voices: the voice for truth, what I was learning, what I was reading, what I was recognizing was really amazing. And I was learning to trust that. But it was in total opposition to the lies that I had been taught. I was taught that God was outside of me. Religion taught me that. My beloved grandmother taught me that. My father taught me that. Course in Miracles was telling me that it's in me. Totally opposites. But I recognized, because I made a decision to move every single thing that I was believing through the body, to scan within. How did it make me feel? When I began to recognize how it made me feel to believe that God was in me, at first it scared the crap out of me. I'm like, I don't want that God in me. Get that shit out of me. I don't want this judgmental, fire throwing God inside of me. It was okay that it was up on a cloud somewhere like Santa Claus, and I only had to deal with it maybe on Sundays when I went to church. I didn't want God in me. But it took me a while to build a bridge from the lie to the truth. It took me a very long time. And the more that I read, the more that I studied, the more that I attended workshops and had experiences where I would feel the goodness of God in me, because I was learning that God didn't create anything that was mean or painful or that causes suffering. I had to train my mind, which is why A Course in Miracles is a course in mind training. I had to train my mind to believe what I was reading about God. And when I would study the teachings from Jesus, and this is channeled information or information that was in different gospels that were left out of the Catholic churches Bible that was put together in during the Nicene conference. That was back in the year, I think it was 325, when the Emperor Constantine called together these bishops and said, okay, we're going to create the Catholic Church. And Catholic stands for universal. They were creating a universal church. And they decided, these bishops got together. When I was reading the history of how the Catholic Church came about, it blew my mind. I began to understand, wow, it is not about teaching us the truth about God. It was about telling us a story about God that would have us fall in line with following the dictates of the, at that time, the Roman Empire. So the Catholic Church, the more that I really got clear what was going on, it was obvious. Year after year, decade after decade, century after century, it was a process of controlling humanity. Then I read so many books, so many teachings, listened to so many podcasts, so many YouTubes, people who had experiences with God. When I went down the rabbit hole of near-death experiences and I began to listen to those who have had near-death experiences, there was a consistent message, like 98% of what I heard, maybe 99, always spoke to people who experienced the process of death, were clinically death for, in the hospital, they were pronounced dead, but they went on to have these incredible experiences. All of them spoke, 99% of them spoke of a loving God. So I'm piecing together all of these teachings, all of these YouTubes, all of these near-death experiences, and they're all saying the same thing. But what they were all saying was of a loving God. But the Catholic Church told me, no, that this is a God. Yes, Jesus spoke of a loving God, but the Old Testament spoke of a wrathful God, a God that punishes. So I had to struggle with what was true in my heart, what I could feel as truth versus what I thought was true in my head. And once it became clear that when I would take two opposite things, polar opposites, this is the whole purpose of this human existence, is to experience polarity and discern which is true. When I was moving into the space of realizing the power that I had to use my body as my guidance systems, I began to then take every single thought that I had that was opposite, and I would run it through, how does it make me feel? And when I would think about God, as I was taught by the church, it was fear. I would feel tight and tense. Ooh, get me away from that God. And when I would just not even let myself, but when I would read these teachings about a loving God that sent it and didn't send his only son, the creative source of all that is, has created all that is. All of us are sons and daughters of the same creative source. All of us are equal. There is absolutely no separation between us, no division. We are different expressions. Like when you look at a puzzle, it wouldn't be a whole lot of fun if the whole puzzle was one color. So all that God can create are different pieces of the puzzle, and every one of us is a piece of it. And when I would feel into that, the diversity of creation as a brotherhood, as a sisterhood, it felt so loving, so peaceful within me. And as I continue my studies in A Course in Miracles, and I'm going, let's see, I started the course in 2011. And the first time I read it was in December of 2011, and I read it cover to cover. I couldn't put it down. It took me like 3 weeks to get through this big, thick book. But I read it cover to cover, even though it told me, read the lessons one a day. I couldn't stop reading it. And I knew that I was meant to read the whole thing because it validated what I had been given by Jesus to teach in 2007. When I was given the power of awareness to share, and I was given the soul's journey to explain what happens to us so that I could understand it first, and then I was teaching it because I was learning it, it became really clear to me that every single one of us incarnates, has a human experience that includes forgetting who we are And then it includes a remembering who we are through the process of ascension, the process of the awakening, whatever you want to call it. And then in 2012, 2011 in December, I was for the first time guided to read A Course in Miracles, read it all in 2 weeks. And then starting January 1 of 2012, so now that's 12 years ago, I read the course every single year. As a matter of fact, I have done the lessons one a day, probably 10 of those years. There might have been 2 of those years where I didn't. I was taking students through year-long programs, which I've been doing now for 7, 8 years. I have groups that we go for an entire year, study specific parts of A Course in Miracles, or the other 2 books that were written by Jesus, channeled by Jesus, either A Course of Love or The Way of Mastery, which in those teachings, Jesus says that they are continuations of A Course in Miracles. They explain A Course in Miracles in different ways, all for the same purpose, to help us remember who we are. So we are at a time where we must make a choice between continuing to believe the lies or believing what is true. And there is a very, very specific reason for that. We are creators of our own reality. And humanity, and I don't have a design like this yet. I have asked my graphic designer to create one, but he's been really busy and he hasn't had time to do the one that I really want to show. But all of our entire journey, if you look at this one, this is a spiral. It's a spiral. And humanity has descended to the lowest point. Not fully. There's a little lower that we can go. And we are in the time right now, if you begin to understand more about the truth of all that is, and you begin to see and you expand your awareness and you begin to move yourself out and beyond observing life from a very finite point, which is what the ego does, and you begin to see, what does Jesus know? And it is explained in A Course in Miracles, it's explained in The Way of Mastery, it's explained in A Course of Love, that there is so much more beyond what we can possibly understand in the 3rd dimension of consciousness, because we are deliberately here indoctrinated into forgetting the truth of who we are. And the mind has to be prepared to understand that there is way more beyond this world. And that is where so much of my joy comes now. It's because I know the bigger picture. And I want to say, I know that there is so much more than even what I have accepted is the bigger picture. So I have not even began to receive or comprehend what is beyond what is already for me so far out there, that of course I don't talk to too many people about this. There are very few people that I have conversations that we share what we're discovering from beyond, because most people are so busy and just so concerned and worried about the day-to-day stuff that we have been conditioned to believe is what life is all about: the bills, the job, the car, the lover, the children, the staying healthy, the working out, the looking good, the haircuts, the makeups, the getting your nails done. All of those things keep us absolutely busy and attached. It keeps us tethered to a very small idea of who we are. Most people operate in very low frequency because it's based on fear. It's based on getting what you're supposed to get. And if you don't get it, you feel shame, you feel guilty, you feel bad. If other people have what you want, you have jealousy. So we are indoctrinated to live in very low frequencies. As a matter of fact, when we move to the 200 frequency, we are activating courage. And courage does not happen when you are operating in depression, in guilt and shame. Those are very low frequencies. You're in self-protection. Courage requires that you begin to be willing to question your own beliefs, that you begin to be willing to move beyond the thoughts that you have had and question, this is what I was taught. Is that really true? As a matter of fact, there is a teacher. Her name is Byron Katie. Her work is fantastic. Her work is all about questioning. It's very simple, 4 questions. She calls it the work. And if you haven't studied Byron Katie, at least go find a video on YouTube and just look up Byron Katie. She is absolutely one of these teachers that came to experience massive contraction, into drugs, massive suffering, and then had a breakdown, had a moment where she broke down. And in that breakdown, she realized, oh my gosh, I need to question what I'm thinking, because what I'm thinking is keeping me stuck. And she had the courage. She moved into a level where she had the courage to question her beliefs. And her process starts with, is that really true? And for me, before I ever studied Byron Katie, that was the exact same thing that I had to go through. Question, is it really true? My first thing that I began to question happened when my mom passed away, and I went into this great grief because I thought I was going to go to hell, because I knew she was going to go to hell. We were best of friends. So, and I knew what she had done. If there was a sinner, my mom was a sinner, and she was going to go to hell. And her death had me fear, oh my gosh, I'm going to go to hell too. And instead of just grieving her death as a pure grief of a daughter missing her mother, I went into terror. I went into fear. I went into, oh my God, I'm afraid of death. I'm afraid of dying. And as I began to be exposed to teachings, the very first teachings were about near-death experiences. Was the first book I ever read that was spiritual. And then second book was about past lives by a book titled Many Masters, Many Lives. And when I began to realize, whoa, there's way more than I have been taught, I expanded my awareness from a very finite idea of life, birth and death, and, whatever you do in between. And then at the end of death, you burn forever. Then I began to expand my awareness. And I began to question, is it really true that there is a hell? That's when I began to research and learn, how did the Catholic Church get formed? How did the idea of hell come about? And everything has a point of origin. But before that, there is more that I did not know. So I studied back to the point of origin of all these stories, Catholic Church, the idea of hell, all of those things. And then as I was studying those things, I was being exposed to there's more beyond that. But those experiences beyond what I could find a point of origin to, I had to feel with my heart. I would have these mystical, I could cry. Some of them have been so beautiful, transcendent experiences where I would be shown the expanded universe. I would be shown truths beyond anything that my mind could comprehend, but my heart understood. That's when it became really clear that I had to switch from what I thought to what I felt. Because as I was feeling, I realized that the purpose of the body, besides to give us this experience of separation, is a guidance system. It's how we can tell, is this true or not? Does it feel good or not? Now, when we operate from the ego, feeling good is about chasing stuff and getting it and acquiring it. And if you don't get it or you lose it, then you feel bad. So I had to train myself out of those rewards and punishments kinds of feelings, out of those highs and lows. And I had to train myself to understand that God's way is very, very even. It's very gentle. There's hardly any movement. That's why it's peaceful. Where the ego's way, feel good, feel bad, feel good. You're constantly like a drug addict. You got the highs, you got the lows. So it took a while to move through these different ways of experiencing what was happening inside of me, recognizing when my head was involved. When I had thoughts of fear, I would have, highs and lows. But when my thoughts were consistent with peaceful thoughts, with thoughts of truth, with thoughts of trusting that all is well, that we are beloveds indeed, I would begin to feel very, very even. As a matter of fact, it's almost like a flat line. And for a while, the one who was becoming present, I was becoming present to the awareness of these two voices. I thought I was bipolar, schizophrenic. And when I read the definitions of those things back then and read it recently, because I've got a client who is, been diagnosed bipolar, and I'm going, no, you're not bipolar in the way that they tell you out there. The bipolar is that you're experiencing the polarity, the highs and the lows of the mind. The egoic mind moves us into these places of highs and lows. And if we're not learned from a young age to question our beliefs, because we're told to listen to what others know. Father knows best, mother knows best, teacher knows best, government knows best, boss knows best, something outside of you knows better. We stop connecting with who we truly are. And because we stop connecting with who we truly are, we don't listen to the guidance system. We move into what the head is telling us. And then the head uses the body to feel good, to feel bad. So it's just strictly up and down. When you begin to question things, is this really true? Like Byron Katie says. And then there's another question. Another one of those is, are you sure that you are right? Are you sure that this is really true? Because most of us answer the question, is this really true, from the place of the ego first. So she asks you again, are you sure? And when you can then begin to have the courage, again, which is a high frequency at 200, most people will not go to courage, because the courage, we think courageous because we're speaking up to somebody, or we're standing up for ourselves. That is a form of courage, absolutely. But the courage that elevates us to this higher frequency is the courage to question yourself, because a spiritual journey is an inward journey. So who are you going to question? You have to question what you believe. You have to be able to be an observer of your own thoughts. This is how we bring them into conscious awareness. When I began to question, well, is it really true that I'm going to go to hell? Can I be certain that this is true? I couldn't be certain that that was true. I didn't know anybody that went to hell and came back and told me about it. I have not visited hell. I haven't even seen a brochure of hell. I don't even really know how do you get there? Where is it? How can it be that that's the place where people end up? When I began to question, well, and had the courage to go, well, maybe hell is not real. Well, what if hell was not real? And that's when all the books explaining that it was all made up began to make so much sense. But it requires a courage to question yourself. When you can learn to overwrite your righteousness, you then are really beginning to move down that inward journey that allows you to come closer to knowing the God within. But the ego is all about being right, and it's all about being right based on what we have learned from the outer world. That's why I was given the soul's journey. That's why I do the circle. Every one of my workshops, I do so many of my one-day courses, is just strictly to look at, understand the soul's journey. We go through very distinct phases. Course in Miracles helped me understand when I began to read it, oh my gosh, this happens in this phase, this happens in this phase. And even though the course doesn't speak of those phases, the teachings matched what I was discovering, that as little children, we learn to believe things that are not true. That's why this is the learning phase. And then we go on to allow the ego to control our lives. That's why I call this a control phase before I ever read A Course in Miracles. And then the process of moving through the indoctrination that we have received, the learning, we got to get curious. And to get curious is to have the courage to begin to move beyond what we have been conditioned to believe is the limit. Well, this is, you want to make this much. Why this much? Why not that much? And you've got to get this person. Why that person? Why not one of billions of people? And you got to have this place, and this is what's going to make you happy. Again, because we have been conditioned. So it takes a lot of courage to question those things. But then comes the hardest part of the journey. And truly, it's the hardest part. And it's where most people will start it. But the Course tells you, everybody wants to wake up. Everybody wants to come to the wisdom phase. But very few will do the work, because very few have the courage to question themselves because we believe that to be right is to be who we are. And to go, was I wrong? Is very difficult, is very challenging to our own psyche, because we have so many fearful experiences where if we didn't do it the way the teacher said, or the way mother said, or the way father said, we got in trouble. And so we don't want to be wrong. We have to be right. It's almost, not even almost, it's a process of self-protection. It's survival to be right. That's why it's so difficult for people in loving relationships that start off, two people fall in love. How can you fall in love and sometimes even create a family and then you go opposite directions? Because we begin to protect ourselves, and the ego does not want us to be open and to be willing to say, maybe I made a mistake, because of the ego that feels like death. But this journey is about realizing that there is a death, if you will, of the ego. I use quote unquote because it's not a real thing. You can't go kill it. You can't stab it. It's not like an organ that you can touch it and feel it and feel the solidity of it. Ego is thoughts that we have that we bring together, and they come together. And as we think those thoughts over and over and over again, they become solid. So you're told your name is Laina, and you hear it over again, and they call you Laina, and everywhere you go, you're told Laina, then you think you are Laina. Well, you're not going to want to question, am I really Laina? Is this really true that I'm Laina? Well, yes, of course I am. I've got the passport to prove it. I've got the driver's license to prove it. The social security, we got proof everywhere. But to be able to really move through the process of unlearning, you've got to realize that you're not who you think you are. I'm not Laina. I am the consciousness of all that is, the essence of the energy that makes up everything, expressing itself as this point of awareness, expressing itself as this particle, as one of you mentioned in our class Monday night. That is what we really are. And that is nameless. It doesn't need a name. What is all that is doesn't need a name. It's all that is. But I am expressing as Laina. And it is okay to acknowledge the name Laina as who I identify myself as for the purpose of having an experience. Because if we all walked around and we all realize that we're just particles, well, how are you going to connect on Facebook, communicate with people, if your name is particle and their name is particle and everybody's particle? Well, the different names give us the ability to express ourselves. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. But what we're letting go of is this is the truth. This is who I am, so that we can have the courage to discover what more is there that I didn't know about. Because when you move beyond your identity, when you move beyond who you think you are, your small self, your egoic self, you come to feel your expanded self, your soul, your spirit, whatever you want to call it, your higher self, your transcendent self. It doesn't matter what we call it. So as we've been studying in A Course in Miracles, we are still in chapter 30 called The New Beginning. And, there's no way to rush through these amazing teachings in A Course in Miracles. In the new beginning, we are basically being told that we are entering a time. And the Course in Miracles came now, 2,000 years after Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection, because that's the important thing. Is the Catholic Church focuses on the crucifixion, but the Course in Miracles focuses on the resurrection. That part of Jesus that is eternal, his soul, his self, his higher self. But the religion focuses on the egoic aspect of ego, the human, the body, the man named Jesus that lived in this specific town, very, very contracted idea of who Jesus is. But also we are given that this being resurrected. But that story is not the one that is expanded. So Jesus, 2,000 years later, came to give us the expanded version of what Jesus is, which means what we are. Because Jesus 2,000 years ago was teaching, I and the Father are one, and so are you. But that's not what the Catholic Church, that's not what most religions do not teach, that we are all one with the creative source, that they tell us only Jesus, and he died for our sins, and he's the only son of God, and blah, 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 blah. And when we believe that, of course, we fill our mind with misinformation. We contract ourselves into a very small idea of who we are. This is a journey about expansion. And the reason we have to expand is because we are ascending. We are coming out of the low density, the low frequency of who we are. And if you put these posters side by side, this cone that comes down to a very small contracted area is also what I show here. So you could think of our human journey as this cone. So as we are ascending through curiosity, through unlearning, through questioning things, is this really true? Letting go of what is not true and feeling the truth of what is true, then we can ascend. And as we ascend, we are expanding to another level of I don't know what word to use. It's expansion. Humanity is maturing. We're growing up. Just as we moved out of the dark ages, we went into the farming ages, we went to the industrial age, we went to the technology age. We are now moving to the age of Aquarius, the age of ascension. And it is a time when we're operating from the truth of who we are. Those who are ascending now know we're all one. We're all really brothers and sisters. We are not attached to the human stuff. That's not what excites us. What excites us is knowing that we're eternal. We're beyond this body. We're discovering our resurrected self. We are learning, what is that? What is this formless essence that I'm made of? And we're beginning to cultivate a relationship with this greater part of us. Because as we know the greater part of us, we then can see the greater part in another. Course in Miracles calls it the light. We get to see the light in them. We activate Christ's vision to see everybody as the child of God that they are, as the particle that is eternal that we each are. What that means, and this is why it's so important to align with what we are as this non-physical being, is that if you know you're all one, jealousy goes away, competition goes away, contrasting, stealing, cheating, lying, all those things go away when you know that you're all connected. We know that we're all one. So there's no need for those low frequency emotions. Also, what goes away is fear. Fear of death goes away because you know you're eternal. You're cultivating a relationship with a part of you that does not die. So yes, it's sad to not be here. And, of course, it'll be sad to when the time comes for me to transition and know that, well, I'm not going to get to be with my grandchildren in their physical solid forms. But there's this peace. There's this peace that passes all understanding that allows me to know that I'm eternally connected to them. I will be able to see them exactly as I do now from a non-physical aspect, exactly as Jesus sees us and guides us through things like A Course in Miracles, exactly as so many other ascended masters are communicating with us, channeling through so many different people, guiding us. The connection doesn't end. So as you shift your allegiance to what is true, you find this incredible peace that allows you to experience the temporary journey of being human for what it is. It's a game, it's a playground, it's a ride. You're on it, you arrive, you get your ticket, you get on the rides, and then you exit without attachment. And then the next life, you do it differently. But the Course is letting us know, my year-long program that we're in, we're studying the lessons in depth this year. And we were looking at some of those lessons. And in those lessons, we are being told that there is so much beyond what our minds can comprehend when they're so focused in this dimension. So that is one of the main reasons why we want to expand our awareness, to become like little children whose minds were not indoctrinated and programmed and boxed in. So we are shifting out of that box, out of that indoctrination, to open ourselves up for more of what is. The new beginning is that we're at the time now where many are choosing to operate from love and are no longer willing or tolerating being programmed by liars and cheaters and selfish people and greed. We're like, no, we're not interested in that. We are all here connected. We're one. We're supposed to share. So this transition into the new beginning, a new earth that Eckhart Tolle wrote about 20, 25 years ago, is all about what it looks like when humanity has questioned their beliefs, their doubts, their fears, and have accepted the truth of who we are. Powerful beings. And in these lessons, we have been reading now for a little while the justification for forgiveness, which is one of the teachings in A Course in Miracles. And it's the primary teaching of the Course, because we have to forgive ourselves for forgetting the truth. We have to forgive ourselves for incarnating into a game where we got conditioned, we learned what is not true, and then we went on to control life from that place, and we just let that be our reality. So we are training our mind to think differently. So when you read the truth in A Course in Miracles, it's going to be very opposite to what you thought was true. And then you have to make the choice courageously. Am I going to believe what is true according to God, or am I going to keep believing what is true according to the made-up ego? And that is where the honesty really comes in, and the courage. Is not easy to override yourself. And I have so many people that I've had the pleasure of teaching, coaching for almost 2 decades now. And so many, yes, they want to have the freedom. They know that they are non-physical, but they still are lost in the day-to-day minutia of the bills, of the worries and the concerns, and the what is right and the what is wrong, and in my car and my house and my dog and that takes up so much of our lives. And it's not that we stop caring about those things, but it's that we begin to experience those things for the temporary journey that they're all about. They don't add to what we are. They are opportunities for us to express the love that we are, the compassion that we are, the kindness that we are, the gentleness that we are. Is for us to experience all of those things from a place of knowing who we are. So it's a big shift, and it is a new beginning, because the old ways is that the outer world has power. The new ways, the new beginning, is that all power comes from within. And by the way, I'm not the only one that has it. So does everybody else. So we have to see everybody as a creator. We have to see everybody as a soul that is choosing this incarnation. That's where we have to move out of the idea that we can fix anybody, or that even anybody needs fixing. Number one, they don't need fixing. Number two, we can't fix them. So everybody has to wake up to this journey when they're ready to move through that process, because everybody gets to choose how long they suffer. Absolutely a choice. Now, are there people who are suffering and they don't know that they have a choice? Yes. That's why we become examples. That's why if they're interested, you have to let them tell you that they're interested. But the way that they become interested is by observing your change and going, wow, I want the peace that you have. You are so comfortable in your own skin. Well, you don't react to stuff like we used to react. You're so calm. You're so kind. We are giving ourselves permission to let ourselves be an example of the new beginning. That is why we are taught we have to become the change we want to see in the world. We don't change the world. We become the change. Others observe it and get curious because they have the courage to go, I like what they're doing. I like how she's behaving, how he is behaving. And the ones who typically will come to us and ask us about how do we change are the ones who knew us, the old way and the new way. And they're like, wow, those are so different. So it's a beautiful process. So in the last couple of paragraphs that we've been studying, it's all about recognizing that the process of forgiving ourselves for having forgotten the truth is a journey of unlearning. We are unlearning what is not true, and we are remembering the truth. So we have to forgive ourselves for forgetting, through the process of learning what is true, and we begin to have the courage to question what we thought was true, and be able to then go, well, what if this is true? What if we are one? What if I treat people as one? What if I treat people with kindness? And you then let yourself feel, because you will feel very different when you treat somebody as if they're your brother and sister in eternal, in Christ consciousness, versus when you treat them as this separate person, this mean neighbor, this mean parent that did something bad to you. If you, in your mind, begin to change by questioning, is it really true that they're a separate mean parent? And you go to God's version. No, you're not a separate mean parent. Everybody's a loving being and everybody is connected. So then you begin to dismantle those ideas of separation, because you now have the courage to go, well, maybe the truth is, this greater truth is that we are one, but we're having an experience, a temporary experience as separate people. So if you want peace in your heart, you got to treat them as the one that you are. If you want suffering, you want anxiety, you want highs and lows, then keep seeing them as separate. For a while, you're going to have both awarenesses in your mind. Where the courage really comes in is you got to pick the one. You got to pick the one that is true. You got to side with the truth. So you've got to override beliefs that are not true in your own mind. You've got to say, no, I am not going to continue to see people as separate from me. I'm going to recognize that there is an expression that appears to be separate, but in my heart, I know that we're all made of energy. And the space between me and them is filled with the same energy that we are. And boy, does that begin to change how you experience and perceive others. So Jesus was telling us that when we begin the process of practicing forgiveness and we begin to understand that everybody is perfect, we were told that there is absolutely no way, when you begin to see the perfection of everybody, there is no way that you can continue to see them as good or bad, as mean or evil, or to feel fear about them. And we are told that as we see the truth of another, that's because we're remembering the truth of who we are. And then when we can make this joyful statement, is what the Course says, this is in paragraph 9, and we can say, I thank you, Father, for your perfect son and daughter. And in his glory will I see my own. Because when we can begin to see everybody, when I began to see my former husband as, oh my gosh, he is a perfect son of God. He was not this mean person hurting me. He was somebody suffering in his belief of who he was and who I was in separation. But I was the one who was beginning to understand we're all one. His attacks on me are not about me. They're reflections of his pain. So why do I need to defend? Why do I need to attack him back? I needed to see him with compassion. I needed to remember he's a holy brother that is suffering. But if he doesn't want to see the truth, if he is not saying, hey, I want to stop my suffering, who am I to treat him as if he's less than the powerful creator that he is? So you allow it to be. If the marriage ended, it ended. But it didn't mean that there was something wrong with either one of us. It just meant that he was believing things from his past that he had not looked at. I was believing things that were true because I had looked at my past. Doesn't make me better than him. It just made me somebody who was more aware of my ability to manage my own experience inside. And if I could learn to manage my experience inside, then I could learn how to manage what I believed about him out there, the experience of out there. So then we were told in last week's paragraph number 10, is that to look on our brothers and sisters with this hope that they are perfect, this hope in us, then we will begin to understand that they can't make any errors. They've made mistakes, yes, but they can't be sinful. There is no hell that they're going to go to. God's not going to punish them. God welcomes every one of us as the prodigal children that we are, that came into the human journey, forgot who we are, and now we're remembering who we are. And as I've said a bazillion times, it's like we put on a costume for Halloween, and then we pretend for the rest of our lives that we're the costume. Unlearning is to look at the costume and go, wait a second, I'm not a witch. Oh, wait a second, you're not the devil. And we take the costumes off and we go, who are you really? And we get to know the truth of who we are. We stop operating from masks and costumes and pretenses. So when we can begin to see the truth of another, that they're perfect, it's because we've already been doing that in us. We can't give them what we don't have. And when you have awareness that you are perfect, you see it in them and you focus on that in them. Now you realize nothing's going to happen to them. They are eternal. In this temporary experience, if they choose to suffer, they choose to suffer. They're the creators of their reality. You begin to gain a respect for everybody as a powerful creator, as an infinite soul creating this experience. So as we completed that, now we are in a new section. Section number 7. And this one is the new interpretation. The course is very methodical how it moves us from understanding one thing to the next to the next. So once you realize forgiveness frees all of us, because we're forgiving ourselves first for forgetting the truth of who we are. Now you forgive yourself, you need a new interpretation. You need to interpret things from truth, not from lies and stories. So it goes on to say in paragraph 1, sentence number 1, would God have left the meaning of the world to your interpretation? Do you think God's going to let a bunch of fickle people interpret truth? Politicians and doctors that are all humans and make mistakes? Is God going to let people who treat each other in selfishness and in greed and do things that are for their own best interest? Do you think God's going to let us interpret the truth? People who enter the church and proclaim to be these spiritual beings and these powerful beings, and they run these churches and they tell us that they're better than the rest of us. Do you think God's going to let those people interpret the truth for us? No. This is why we have to understand that God's truth is true always, no matter who is interpreting it. This is why we've got to move beyond and question all interpretations until we come to the truth that is unchanging. So no way the creative source, the most intelligent source of all that is, would leave interpretation of what is up to us. If he had, it has no meaning because everybody can change it. Then what would be the meaning of truth if everybody has their own version of truth? For it cannot be that meaning changes constantly and yet is true. Either we are eternal or we're not. If we're bodies, if we're temporary and we only go in one direction, you're born and then you die and you live in hell forever. Can that be true? If God says that what you are true is eternal and you are energy and you cannot be altered, you can be transformed and changed from one lifetime to another, but the essence of the energy does not change itself. So the Holy Spirit looks upon the world as with one purpose, changelessly established. God established our purpose. We're eternal beings pretending to put on costumes. Each lifetime, we have a different experience. It's a game. We're playing the game of incarnation, but we're lost in what we've been taught and conditioned to believe in jealousy and greed and hierarchy, best, better than, lesser than, haves and have-nots. It's all made up. God created all of us equal. So we have to unlearn what we were taught so that we can begin to remember what is true. That is how we come up with a new interpretation, is know God's truth, and then we agree to it by having the courage to override our false beliefs, our temporary false beliefs. And no situation can affect its aims, but must be in accord with it. Just because your spouse passes away or your parents passes away or your child passes away or your best friend gets cancer, none of those experiences, no matter how you experience them in your human form, alter that they have not died. The essence of who they are is eternal. The ego doesn't want to hear that because ego thrives of the suffering, the low of feeling so bad that I lost something. And then I got to find something to make me feel better. I got to go find something to seek to make me feel better. Ego loves that seesaw, up and down, up and down. But what you are is eternal. Can you interpret life as eternal energy that comes in and puts on a costume temporarily, like we put on a costume for Halloween? It's a short-term experience. And when you leave the party, you say goodbye. And we don't call that death when we leave the party and we don't see them again for maybe another year. Well, why do we call that, have the death experience be so painful? So you don't see them for another 10, 20, 30, 40 years, but you're part of the eternalness. The next lifetime you can dance together. We've got to interpret things in the truth of what they are to give us freedom and peace now. For only if its aim could change with every situation, could each one be open to interpretation, which is different every time you think of it. You add an element into the script you write for every minute in the day, and all that happens now means something else. You take away another element, and every meaning shifts accordingly. Every single time you decide, I'm not going to believe that the medical doctors know better than I. I'm going to connect with the source that's in me. If God is in me and God is the source of all well-being, find the medical doctor in you, find the shaman in you, find the source of healing in you. That's a new interpretation. This is why we're in a new beginning. We have been conditioned. We all learned that we go to the medical doctor outside of us. We are in a new interpretation, unlearning that the power is outside, coming courageously to the power is inside, activating that power, and moving about the work of self-healing. This is the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, of Dr. Joe Dispenza. We have so many people on the planet, each have found the truth in a very specific way, and they all share it so that we can put the pieces of the puzzles together. Self-healing in the new earth is going to come from within. But we have been conditioned to go outside of ourselves, and we trust and we take things and put things in our bodies that are not necessarily good for us because we don't know any better, because we are just conditioned. We have learned to give our power away, and now we are reversing that. That is what the new interpretation is that you are powerful. You, through the power of your mind, through the power of what you think, if you create a new interpretation based on the truth of who we are eternal beings. Your temporary experience in this lifetime is going to be so much more joyful, is going to be so much more peaceful, because you will know that you are an eternal being, and we go around in circles and we incarnate if we want to. And in this lifetime, we are waking up in this lifetime. We don't have to go through the death experience and on the other side go, oh, wow, nothing was true. I can't wait to go back in again. We don't have to wait till we leave to discover that we can be here right now and let this be heaven on earth. There is no hell except the one that we create in our own minds. The Course in Miracles is very simple. We have to train our mind. And to train our mind is to discover that we have polar opposite thoughts. If you believe in oneness and you're still mad and angry and judging and upset by what other people do, you're not operating in oneness. You're operating in separation. You've got to get honest about what you're doing. And then have the courage to question, well, is thinking this thought making me feel good or bad? And if it's going to be an ego thought and it's based on separation, it's going to make you feel bad. Are you tired of feeling bad? When I realized, you know what, I'm tired of feeling bad. Like I said, around 2007, it just absolutely, I made the decision. I am not going to continue to believe what is not true. And let me say this, I continue to believe a lot of things that were not true for a while, because it took me a while to cross that bridge. And I'm not fully on the other side of that bridge yet, but I'm moving there. So with love and gratitude and appreciation in my heart, I want you to know that you mean so much to me. You are just so powerful, so amazing. And I cannot wait to continue these gatherings with you. And I will see you next week, Wednesday, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, for these Ascension with A Course in Miracles gatherings. And also to remind you that if you want to watch past episodes, they're on my YouTube channel, Laina Orlando. Thank you all so much for being here. If anybody wants to unmute yourself and share, if you got any nuggets, go ahead. If not, that's all right. Nobody has to do that. And then we will see you next week. Oh, thanks for the heart. Thanks for the love there, sweetie. Appreciate it. All right, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.